and new arrivals coming to WWE and AEW, specifically Naomi, who is currently in TNA. Her contract is nearing its end, and there's speculation that she will be returning to WWE soon. Now, according to PW Insider, they expect Naomi to be back in WWE by the end of January. And there's also speculation that Mercedes Moné, formerly Sasha Banks, may return to WWE, but negotiations have not been that successful. Some sources believe that Mercedes is more likely to debut within AEW instead of WWE. Now, I have my thoughts about this, but what do you guys think about Naomi's return and the potential return of Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks in AEW? Do you think that is realistic?
I think Monet can definitely do another big run in WWE, but I've been always kind of hearing things about her when it comes to the financial part that she's kind of difficult with that. And there was a point in time it looked like she was going to AEW, right? Like, wasn't she at the big pay-per-view they had last year?
Yeah, it was. I think it was New Japan Forbidden Door.
Yeah,
the crossover pay-per-view.
She was at All In too.
Yeah. Naomi coming back, I think that's cool. I'm curious to see what they would do with her because the women's division is actually really good too going on right now too, and WWE's really been kind of going back, kind of pulling old superstars to come back, which is cool. But Monet coming back would be very interesting. I feel it's just like I would be very curious to see like where she would go because especially with like you got the Judgment Day and then obviously Mommy being the champion over there, and then you got Damage Control who's on the other show. I think right, they're on two different shows and like. Yeah. They're running the women's division. They're all planning on taking the tag titles and stuff like that. That'd be cool if both of them came back and maybe went after the tag titles. I don't know. That'd be interesting though. I could definitely see it.
I got a take on Naomi.
Shooting.
We shooting. I didn't really care for Naomi in her original WWE run. So I'll just put that.
You don't like the glow gimmick?
I didn't care. Like it was just something I just didn't really give a shit about.
It was okay. Yeah, it wasn't like wow like or anything. Yeah, I agree.
It didn't blow me away, but I feel like if she was going to come back in WWE, I feel it's just like it's been my opinion that WWE's roster is very stacked. So I feel like there just isn't like room for like somebody like Naomi. I feel like if she wants to actually excel as like her own wrestler, she's better off going to like a TNA or a WWE, an AEW, because I feel like there's just more room for that kind of person because she's good. But like if you got somebody like Rhea Ripley or whatever, like they have a big roster, I would say that she'd be better off in like AEW or staying in TNA, I guess.
Wouldn't you say AEW has a big women's roster, but he just doesn't take advantage of the women that he's hired? Because technically, because he has done a lot of signups, and there are a lot of people within his roster who are women wrestlers. Britt Baker is one that we talked about. I feel like in AEW. And this is my opinion about Mercedes Moné because if for those of you who forgot, Mercedes and Naomi were tag team champions, if I'm not mistaken, and they were tag team champs during Vince's reign, and they left, and this was essentially the peak Vince McMahon scandal era in 2022. They left to pursue they just didn't like the direction of where their stories were going, where the women's tag team championship belts were going. They didn't like the state of the women's roster at the time, and they left. They basically pulled a Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yep.
And if you guys remember, the commentary team, Michael Cole, and I forgot who else was with them at the time, but they basically
Graves.
Thank you. Yes. They made a commentary basically scolding them that they took their ball and went home. And this was in like the peak sexual assault Vince McMahon accusation era. So it just didn't look that great on WWE's end when this was happening. because you got the owner of WWE having all these issues, and they're on television trying to tell Sasha Banks and Naomi that what they did was bad when you had this at the same time. Bad PR.
Yeah.
Bad PR. And then they went their separate ways. Naomi went to TNA. Mercedes went to New Japan Pro Wrestling, right? I'm not.
Yeah,
she did.
Yep. Yeah, and she had her own run there, and she's been doing her own thing. She's been acting. She's been wrestling in other promotions, and she made a cameo appearance at an AEW pay-per-view. Was it All In?
Yeah.
She made a cameo at All In, and there was a lot of speculation about her going to AEW. And my issue with that is it's twofold. So Naomi, it seems like she is going to WWE, and they were a pair. They're best friends, and Mercedes has a lot of friends in WWE, including Bailey. There have been a lot of teases on social media with Bailey and Mercedes and Naomi. She shared a lot of pictures on Instagram stories. And the speculation right now is that Mercedes is going to make her debut in AEW. Now, as a consumer and as a person looking from the outside in, I feel like AEW's women's roster is not as strong in terms of storylines and direction in general as WWE's. And I've been hearing stories from big journalists, Dave Meltzer, people under Dave Meltzer's wing who are talking about that Mercedes is imminently going to AEW. She's supposed to debut in a Dynamite or Collision or Revolution. I don't know. They just said it's an imminent thing. But like logistically for me, it doesn't make any sense because she had this entire issue with WWE for this specific reason about the women's rosters not being treated as well, but then she would make a financial decision to show up in AEW where they haven't really proved themselves to be a great women's to have a great state of the women's roster. You know what I mean? So if Naomi's going to WWE, I don't understand from Mercedes' perspective that she would go to AEW instead, where the focus on women is, I think, less than WWE on SmackDown and Raw. I don't know how you,
I would agree with the.
How do you guys feel about that?
I agree with the roster thing, but I do feel like Mercedes could have more say with her own personal character in AEW. She would have more creative freedom, so maybe she could help make that women's division more of what you were explaining of how it is versus WWE. I mean, they are both stacked shows. Like there's no doubt they're both very stacked in both divisions, both men and women's. But I do feel that like Monet, if she goes to AEW, she'll probably take more of a pay cut, honestly, probably versus WWE. But at the same time, too, like I think if she goes to AEW, she'll have more of a, like I said, creative freedom to do what she wants for her character. And I think she can make some really good storylines. And I think it'd be more entertaining to see her wrestle new faces too. You know, she'd be like the oddball in, really. So like, you know, like she was basically one of the faces of the women's division for a while, I would say many years ago, like top 3 for sure. Part of the four horsewomen and stuff. And that was a cool gimmick. So I feel like if she went to AEW, it might be better. She could help elevate the women's division, which is very talented and stacked. They got some really good wrestlers over there. It's just, AEW just doesn't, I don't know. Feels like there's just some hits and wins, but more hits than anything really. Like they're not really getting like those memorable like matches and stuff like that. And like I don't know, I don't really hear too much about it really. Whereas AEW, like Io Sky's praised very much, and so is Mommy. Like they're both, you know, really good champions in their own right. So I think Monet going to AEW might be a better fit, but I don't know. She could also not be happy going there. But I don't think going to WWE she would have that much of a, like I said, a reign of freedom to do what she really would be happy with, per se, versus AEW.
I mean, I think Triple H, as he overtook Vince McMahon in the creative decisions, and Vince McMahon is a big. I feel like Sasha Banks is a Triple H guy, but Chris, David, you guys watch AEW and you know the state of AEW's women's division better than I do. Do you feel like there's some insight that I'm missing here? What do you feel? How do you feel about Mercedes going to AEW? Where do you think she fits within that
I think she'd go
women's
straight to
picture?
the top of the card, but I also feel like she's better. She'd have better matches in WWE. On AEW's card can't really. Their roster doesn't have a track record of going like 10 plus minutes for like matches.
Yeah.
And I think that if she wants to transition from New Japan where she was going 20 minutes, 25 minutes back to an American style, that WWE would at least give her those 15, 20-minute marks. And that's more so because the girls can go, not that the AEW girls can't go, but their matches aren't produced to last that long.
Yeah. Chris, any thoughts?
Well, I would say money talks, and I think Tony Khan is definitely more than willing to just shell out a fuck ton of money for what she feels
That's what I think, so.
she's worth, right? Whereas like the supposed rumor is that WWE did not want to play ball as far as a certain number of what she probably asked for. So I'm guessing that she would go based on what she's getting paid, which makes sense. I mean, if you had the opportunity to make $25 million, like okay, I'm gonna go
Over 5 years, to be fair, it's not going to be a
Sure.
lump sum.
Still, but still, I mean, it's still more money. I'm assuming that than was on the table for WWE. But again, I'm just speculating. I think she has an opportunity to also shape the AEW women's roster, being that popular women's wrestler. So I think a lot can go right, but also a lot can go wrong. So it's a tough call. But my gut says that she would benefit at least in the short term in AEW, but I think they need direction in this new year, and we're still waiting to see that.
I mean, and that's the other thing. We're talking about direction. I mean, Saraya, that she would Paige in WWE, if you guys don't know, she was a massive star, right? And then she got injured. She had to retire early. How do you guys feel that Tony? How do you feel how Tony Khan basically is managing Saraya's career right now? Do you feel like her? Do you feel like her current situation in AEW? Do you think it's going to mirror Mercedes' potential storylines and feuds?
I feel like a lot of the Saraya matches are like at a 70% speed, and I feel like it's a lot of more so inexperience on AEW's part, not trusting Saraya so much more than Saraya trusts them.
I mean, I guess to be fair, her neck was also broken, so I guess she's a little more limited than Mercedes in terms of ability. But Chris, what do you think?
I got this take from one of my clients. He was saying essentially that people are kind of babying her as far as like taking certain bumps and spots and things like that, which makes sense. So that might be why there's this like limit as far as like where she is at on the card, because I think people are just afraid like they're gonna like mess her up. So
Feel her.
yeah, I mean, obviously the hype was there when she showed up because it's like you thought she was done, but the Outcast thing came and gone. It's kind of lingering a little bit because it's still her and Ruby Soho.
Well, they got that new girl
Who?
that's like a recruit, like that Harley Cameron or whatever her name is.
Oh yeah.
No.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's still early in the year, so we'll see, where the women's division specifically goes in AEW. But I mean, just based on the past, I mean, it's a roll of the dice. There's moments where it's really good, and then there's moments where it's just like whatever.
So, how about final thoughts? If you had to make a decision, gun to your head, where do you think Mercedes is going to show up? Do you think she's showing up in AEW, or is she showing up at the Rumble in WWE?
Rumble.
Oh, Rumble. Now I think about it. I was just thinking AEW, but now I'm thinking Rumble would make a ton of noise. I feel be in the ring with Becky Lynch too, and then show up when the countdown comes in. You want to make sure you have the right people in the ring
AJ
too.
Lee potentially. I'll say that for later. in our
That would be a
Rumble
big
segment,
Rumble
but-
if you had AJ Lee and Sasha Banks come back in the same. Oh man, that would be huge. That would make a lot more sense. That could be a last minute thing like they did with Punk. Just come on out.
I would say AEW. I don't know when. I'm guessing anywhere between now and like February, or March, I guess, is Revolution. But I'm leaning more towards AEW signing.
You think it's just going to be like a Dynamite debut?
It might be. I mean, it could be.
I think she should show up on a pay-per-view if she does show up over there.
Yeah. So Revolution.
Actually, can I
As we
throw
wrap
another
this-
question out there?
What's that?
Can I do a shoot from the hip question real quick
You
too?
absolutely could.
Okay, so let's just say we go with the agreement that let's just say she's going to the Rumble. Let's just say that. Would she win it?
No,
Sasha Banks?
Yeah.
Yes. I think she
Okay.
would. I think she would. That's the other curious thing. I wonder if like if she decides to go to WWE, that she would say, I want to be called Mercedes Moné because I can keep my name. Kind of like CM
True.
Punk.
Yeah.
And WWE doesn't have to own that name. What about, okay, so let's wrap this specific news story up with Naomi. So where do you see, she's expected to be in WWE. Where do you think she's going to go? Do you think she's going to be with her man, Jimmy Uso, on SmackDown? You think she's going to go to Raw? How would she be treated with the rest of the women in WWE? Where do you think her placement is?
Mid card, lower mid. Probably
I
mid.
think upper mid.
With the Funkasaurus?
Yeah, exactly. Some throwaway gimmick.
I'd say upper mid, and then determining what they do, who she rivals, and what she does. Because like I said, it's a stacked roster, man. So
I would say, what if
maybe-
she debuts on NXT?
I don't think she'll be JB. She's not a Baron Corbin. If we're talking about like women's talent and roster and charisma, she's SmackDown or Raw worthy for sure. And I think if she debuts back in WWE and once her contract ends with TNA, but I feel like there's this partnership with WWE and TNA that I think is important to consider when we're talking about these negotiations. But if she decides to jump back to WWE, go under their contract, I think she's going to be on SmackDown with her husband, Jimmy Uso.
I can see that.
Honestly, I kind of want to see her to being as a heel and just be part of the bloodline, like that'd be interesting. But I think if she goes back to WWE, I think they'll treat her as well as the Usos. I think they're going to have her up there. She'll be feuding with, it depends if she's a face or a heel, but I think she'll be feuding with the top women on SmackDown or Raw, personally.
Okay.
But let's wrap this story up and let's jump in.